What's up, world? It's your main man, the author. Right back at that ass again. Here's another one. What's going on? Just want to make this brief video. I wanted to speak on LeBron James, man. And I saw clips of the last game because I don't watch basketball, the NBA, like I used to. Because, quite frankly, the quality, in my opinion, the quality of the game has reduced. I grew up in the era of Jordan, Karl Malone, Clyde the Glide, Keem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Stockton. So I'm used to seeing those guys play and I was in high school. As when I was younger, even younger than that, I remember a few games with Isaiah Thomas. Magic Johnson used to be one of my favorite players of all. I think he's one of the greatest of all time. But I just want to speak on this LeBron James thing because, like I said, those guys back then. I know when I was outside and used to play, I used to mimic the New York Knicks hand check. You know what I'm saying? So when they used to have that hand check, that hand on your back like that hand check on you wherever you went, that hand went. How the Knicks used to have that hand check in the 90s. I used to like that, man. But now these guys play no defense. I mean, shit, they just watch the defender of LeBron watches LeBron like I would watch him from the stands. Just let him, it's like at least jump up, like they're looking at him like, oh, wow, he really can. Like, come on, man, play some defense, man. At least look like you're trying to stop the guy. Like with the, Stephon Curry. I watched him a bit when he played at Davidson. I think he took his team to the Sweet 16 the year before he was drafted, or that right before he was drafted. I think he was drafted that same year. And they say he might be the best shooter of all time in terms of with stats. But, I mean, like I said, I like his style. He could play. He does a lot of that playground stuff that I don't think would have worked if he had played in that late 80s, early 90s era with Ewing and those guys. I think they would have just snatched him up, man. David Robinson, also one of my favorites back then. I don't think, just like with LeBron, I don't think LeBron James would be as popular as he is now in the league if he had played against those key guys in the 80s and early to mid 90s. I don't. You know what I'm saying? I think the league has changed a lot, especially in terms of defense and offense too. That's why I don't really watch it as much as I used to. It doesn't really entertain me as much. But anyhow, I was going to just speak on LeBron because I saw this video, and I think he was telling Kyrie Irving. He was telling someone in the video about someone asked him about being a father, and how him being such a good father, X, Y, Z, and so on and so forth. And he was talking and talking. But it reminded me of when he talked about fatherhood. He said something about he said that he came from a single parent home, and you could tell he came from a single mother who was very aggressive. Because one time she jumped on the court. I remember when he first got into the league. I think midway through his career, because I think he's been in the league about 15 years. But I think this is when he first started. Earlier in his career, his mom had jumped on the court because she didn't like one of the calls that was said, and he had to calm her down. But he told the guy, I think this is like in the cab, or it was, I don't know if this is because I don't watch much TV. I don't know if it seemed like it was a skit from a TV show, because HBO used to have Taxi Cab Confessions. And this was like a Uber type thing, and it showed I think Kyrie Irving and LeBron James in the Uber, something crazy. But Anyway, LeBron had told I think it was Kyrie or the other player about how he was raised by a single mom, and it made him want to have kids early and show his father that hey, this is the way you do it, and things of that nature. And some people probably thought that sound that you know had some sounds of some intelligence or sounded like it had some intelligence to it. I think it was nonsense. It sounded like something my little cousin said, similar to what he said too. And I'm like, you don't prove that you can be a better man than your father by having a kid early. I think the most important thing is to have a foundation where you can support that kid. Now, luckily enough for LeBron, he was able to get into the NBA and become a superstar, mostly based on the league being not as competitive as it used to be. Um, but I don't think, I was raised by a single mother as well. Even though I was raised in a household, I was raised by a single mother who was very aggressive. And your father is not really going to care if you raise your kid and he didn't want to be around your mother. And just the fact that you feel you have to prove something to him shows that he didn't have the rite of passage. And that's what I wanted to talk about briefly in this video. I left a comment on a Facebook page when they talked about how LeBron's legacy is cemented, regardless of or irregardless of what he did or his lack of effort in this past NBA final series. And I think this NBA Finals series might go down in history as being one of the worst NBA Finals in history, man. I've never seen where the last game. Not only was it a complete sweep, where Golden State Warriors beat the Cleveland Cavaliers 4-0, but the last pretty much every game it looks like they beat them by at least 10 to 15 points. And the last game, they beat them by 20. And that's the game where LeBron just sat out. Looks like to me he was playing Dr. Phil on the bench. So basically, he did not try to help his team. He let his team down, disappointed his team. And I heard he said certain things. I was listening to this broadcast, this sports broadcast radio station. I heard that he said in one of the post interviews before Game 4 something along the lines of, if you want to beat a team like the Golden State Warriors, you have to have smart players. I mean, just blatantly disrespecting his teammates. And you see him always pouting on the court. And here's the thing, man. As long as you continue the NBA used to get a lot of players from college. They still do. But they used to would not draft a player out of high school. They pretty much shied away from that. They wanted you to have a nice, because they figured you was going to be nice in high school. They wanted you to have a pretty lengthy college resume. And for that matter, they weren't big on getting high school players. But then gradually, as time went on, I guess someone came up with a bright idea, or we can get these guys directly from high school. Then they had a problem. So then they said, well, you have to do complete at least 1 year of college. So basically, guys are just in college just to wait so they can apply for the draft, which is, bad. But here's the thing. A lot of those guys I named earlier, the Karl Malones, the Charles Barkleys, Patrick Ewings, all them guys had a strong college resume. And they were in college about 2 to 3 years before they, sometimes 4 years in college before they even put in for the NBA draft. I repeat, they had at least 2, 3, or sometimes 4 years of college ball before they played or applied. Before they applied or put their name in the hat for the NBA draft. And a lot of them, they had lengthy, really nice college resumes, meaning they took a team like Karl Malone. I think he took his college team to the NCAA tournament. I don't think that the school had ever been able to achieve that. They weren't able to get to the tournament. He took them to the Sweet 16, um, being the leader of that team. Like Isaiah Thomas from the Detroit Pistons, some of them guys took their schools to national championships. I think Elijah Wan and Clyde the Glide, they took University of Houston to the final. So these guys had lengthy college basketball resumes. But not only does college, I think, help excuse me, make a better player, but it also enables players to have what I call a rite of passage. So that rite of passage, what I mean by that is, when a young man or when a boy becomes 12, like in the Jewish culture, I think they put the boy through some type of ritual. And that ritual is pretty much a crossover where it's like you're crossing over from boy to adulthood or manhood, right? Some households, they'll take the kid hunting as sort of a rite of passage. Now you're old enough to have to learn how to survive. You're going to have to know how to do this soon yourself. So it's that rite of passage, right? Pretty much, I would say my rite of passage was when I was 18 and I joined the Navy. It's a crossover between boyhood to adulthood. Sometimes it's the kids going from high school to college, joining the fraternity. That's like a rite of passage type of situation, type of program. So basically, when you take away the college for these kids, it kind of, when they come out of high school, it's still that boy in them. And I'm not saying, yeah, you can have a grown man's body and have a full beard, but still have a boy mentality. I mean, look how adult LeBron looks, but look how he actually acts on the court. If he don't like something another his teammates do, he'll say, like a 4-year-old, right? Oh, he'll have a temper like a woman, basically. Instead of being a leader and saying that's all right. Like a lot of those other players from the old days, Wilt Chamberlain, I mean, they weren't always enthusiastic by the move that their fellow players made, but you couldn't tell, right? They had inner game, strong inner game, meaning they had great control over their emotions. Very stoic. You couldn't tell when they were upset. You couldn't tell. Now sometimes you could tell when they were excited, but when they were upset, you couldn't really tell. So they had pretty much. They was like what my man say, Iceberg Slim. The pimp from back in the day that passed away. I didn't know why he called himself Ice until I read his autobiography. But at first I thought Ice meant the way he was treating his hoes. But he said Ice. He called himself Iceberg Slim because of his demeanor. He said you have to be in that game. You have to be cool as ice. That way it keeps your hoes in line in another way. Even when he had a scene in the book where his I think he told one of his hoes that they stank, and she said something about something, and something about her pussy. She said something like that, and Iceberg said that the joke was funny, but he still didn't laugh because he was in control of his emotions. He had nice inner game because he didn't want the hoes to think that if he acted too like he was joking with them, it might shift the power dynamic between his relationship and their relationship in terms of him being a pimp, them being the hoes, him being a leader, them being the employees. All right, so, and that's why his name was Iceberg Slim, because he said he was cold as ice. His demeanor was always icy, like he was just had that ice demeanor, like you could tell he was in control of his emotions. Never got out of control like LeBron. He never had that situation. Same thing with the Isaiah Thomas and stuff like that. Now, them guys sometimes got into physical altercations because there was a real rivalry sometimes between them guys from that they took from college, right? But in terms of pouting on the bench because one player didn't do, usually when they did go against each other, it was because, okay, we have a distaste for the team, the opposite team. You don't see too many of them players pouting on a bench because they didn't like what the other player on the same team was doing. Those guys never admitted defeat. They never said, oh, this team, in order for us to beat this team, we're going to need better players. You never heard Magic Johnson say no bullshit like that in his interview insulting his team. And that's probably why you never heard Magic Johnson getting swept or anything like that. But basically, that's pretty much the situation. Hold on for 1 second. Let me check something out. Sorry about that. Had to check on the meal there. Got the rice popping everywhere. Turn the stove off. But yeah, so basically I was getting back to this LeBron situation, man. So it's just like, in my eyes, man, as long as the NBA, and I realize why the NBA did it, the reason why they wanted to start taking guys directly from the NBA. I'm sorry, taking why the NBA wanted to take guys straight from high school instead of waiting until they did at least 2, 3, or 4 years in college. They want to get a longer shelf life out of those guys, I think. Because say, for instance, if a guy is 18, he goes to college, he does 4 years, he comes to the NBA, he's 22 now. Now, maybe he can last maybe 6 to 10 years if he lasts like, Jordan or some of these other legends. He goes to the age 40, he's 42. Whereas if they got him from high school, he'd be 38, So they're trying to get more years out of these guys, but they're getting guys that are underdeveloped emotionally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, which is why you have a LeBron James, and his that attitude. I think they got swept. The last game was in Cleveland, and that attitude, man. I know a lot of people were so disappointed because it made for a bad game. And it's no shame. Getting swept is a bit of a shame, but it depends on how hard you fight. If the team was tough and you were within 4 each game, it's like, hey, man, they fought. Like they said, well, if Jordan had been on the team, he couldn't have beat, the Golden State Warriors. But Jordan, Elijah Wan, Barkley, Karl Malone. I never remember any of those captains getting swept. They were against teams that were better. Jordan as well. They'd at least usually win at least one game, and that's an attitude. So what I mean by that is LeBron still has the boy in him, and I think he has a victim mentality because based on what he said when I was talking earlier about the Uber situation or him and Kyrie Irving and the car and Kyrie Irving asking him about fatherhood, he mentioned it was only him and his mother. You could tell that he has, more estrogen, or he has, he was influenced by the estrogen, but had very little testosterone in the home. So, the boy, even though he's been in the NBA about 15 years, the boy is still in LeBron James. So he hasn't had that. And it's even more important for guys who come from single parent homes. It's even more important for them to go through a rite of passage than anyone else because you're coming from a broken home. You're already partially broken. You're going to definitely need a rite of passage. He never had that. Kobe came straight from high school, and I think him and Shaq got into a lot of times when Shaq was playing with the LA Lakers. I think Shaq said he had to slap Kobe in one case over one argument that happened. But once those guys reach the NBA, and that's what here's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for them to go to college first, is because the shit LeBron pulled in the NBA Finals, if had he uh, had been in college and pulled that same shit, some coach like Bob Knight would have slapped the shit out of him and told him to get his big ass back out there on the court and make something happen. I mean, you talking about you the greatest of all time. Pull this team together and make this team a good team. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we realize you may not have the talent you think you have, but something your team has that the other team doesn't have. They have the greatest player of all time, supposedly. You know, some people never talk about that, but he would have known. LeBron would have known not to pull that shit. College would have broke that out of him. You know, but once players get to the NBA, the players or superstars become bigger than the coaches. Just like when I think back in the day, about 10 years ago, when Kobe was playing, when him and Phil Jackson got into it, when they were in LA, when Kobe played for the Lakers, and Phil Jackson says, "Okay, either I go or Kobe goes," and they let Phil go, man. So Phil had to go to the New York Knicks or something like that. So once players reach the NBA, the superstars become bigger than the coaches, which is what I think Bobby Knight was talking about that. So basically, at that point, you should already be disciplined, and some of those players are going to go on to be coaches and so on and so forth. But that's the situation. So if you don't break that out of a player in college, it's too late. Because high school is like a nest, man. It's very protective. Meaning pretty much, your parents can be involved in a high school, and then in high school they'll make sure nothing happens to you because your mom is on the board, or the school board or something like that. It's you get some discipline, but it's a nest. But it's a difference between high school and going to a college where you're competing with all the other best, all the other players who were the best in their high schools. You're competing against them. You're competing for a spot. You're in a school. Maybe not everyone. Maybe some people know you. Maybe some don't. But still, in all, people are going to be competing against you. And coaches at that level, coaches don't have to kiss. They don't kiss the players' asses. So that's the last level where the coach is in the head seat. No matter how popular the college player may be, the coach is the main honcho. He can sit that player out if he wants. There's been some famous coaches who pretty much have sat their. I think I saw one, but it's been some coaches. They'll like I said, Bobby Knight wouldn't hesitate to sit out his top player. So that's where I think college is where you get the boy broken out of the player, and then the player can become a man once he hits the NBA stage. But these guys out of high school don't have that. So what I mean by the rite of passage, like I said, at 12, the Jewish have a thing where they have a rite of passage for the boy to become a man. It's like a ceremony ritual they have. Hunters, or even like say a kid is white kids, a lot of them, some black kids too. But if you live out in the country, some of the fathers will take their kids out hunting when they hit about 12, especially the boys, letting them shoot their first deer or something like that. It's like a rite of passage. Now it's time for you to become a man. This is how the world works. You're gonna eat. You're gonna be the dominant alpha male and go out there and kill the game and bring that back and bring food back home for the family. And it's different ways you can have that. It doesn't have to be just necessarily hunting or the Jewish way. Like I said, I believe mine was when I went to the Navy. That was the first time I actually held a rifle, was when I was in the Navy. So it's like a rite of passage, man. It's the boy becomes a man. LeBron never had that. A lot of these players that play in the NBA today didn't have that. A lot of these football players that play today didn't have a rites of passage transition. So you got a lot of boys in adult bodies, and it's kind of weird because now more than ever you'll see players with the beards, and the beards make an adult look older or more distinguished. So they have the older, more distinguished look, but they're more childish than ever. Like in the '80s, a beard wasn't a big thing. A lot of those guys in the '80s, Isaiah Thomas, Jordan, were all clean shaven, but they were men. They were alpha men. But a lot of the guys today, the football players, basketball players, they have the full beard and they look the role. They look more mature, but actually they're more childish than ever. The atmosphere for the players today are very childish. And I think LeBron James is very childish, putting down his teammates and things of that nature. And not just him, but other athletes as well, because they don't have that rite of passage. LeBron James still looks at himself as he still has a victim identity. And you can tell, you can see it, when he plays, when he sits on the bench, the way he carries himself, he has that victim identity. And I believe that a rite of passage can help take that victim identity away. But I mean, let me know what you think, man. Do you think I went, did I go too far? Was I right? Was I wrong? Did I go left where I should have gone right? And basically, there's no right or wrong answer because these are all opinions. But let me know what you think. Do you think LeBron James is a dope male? Do you think he really is a leader? I definitely don't think LeBron James is leadership quality. And like I said, as long as the NBA continues to draft guys directly from high school or saying that they only need 1 year of college, they're going to continue to get up more childish players. They're not going to have any use for these guys after the game. It's not like after Isaiah Thomas's career, after he played for the Detroit Pistons, he became a coach himself. I think Patrick Ewing became a coordinator. A lot of guys became coaches and things of that nature, but you're not going to have any use for these guys. Barkley became a commentator, but you're not going to have any use for these guys after they get off the court because they're very childish. You're not going to want to work with them afterwards. But make sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell, tell your family, tell your friends. Be sure to share this video on your Facebook or your Twitter account. And that's it for your boy, the author, signing out.